If you've watched my ukulele review, you'd know that I have a soft spot for 90s collectathons, specifically Banjo-Kazooie, the Spyro games, and the Crash Bandicoot games. And I can't be happier that the genre is making quite the comeback. The Spyro and Crash games got beautiful remakes. A Hat in Time and Super Mario Odyssey reminded people of how fun this genre could be, and even Sony surprised us with a beautiful reboot of Ratchet & Clank. And since I didn't get the chance to buy the Spyro Reignited trilogy yet, I was happy to find this little game on Steam. Scamp Hi Hat Havoc, a 3D platformer developed and published by Big Hat Games. From the moment I saw it, I knew I had to get it. So imagine my surprise when I found out that the game is free. That's right, completely free. Even if the game was short, it still doesn't look like a free game. After playing it, however, I think I know why. And I know what you're thinking. How dare you? How dare you pick on a free, defenseless game? Have you no heart, Nijo? Okay, hear me out. I have a reason for criticizing this game, and the fact that it's free is one of the main reasons I decided to make this video in the first place. See, with this series, I'm hoping to provide constructive criticism to mediocre games that had the potential to be great. And this game definitely had the potential. I wouldn't be covering it if I didn't think it deserves fixing. But before we get into what's wrong with the game, let's talk about what's right. First off, the game is cute. It's definitely not Super Mario Odyssey or Spyro Reignited Trilogy, but for a free game, this looks pretty darn good. I love the design of these big hat wizards. They're adorable and they crack me up. The same can't be said about Scamp though. He looks quite ugly and out of place. However, I wouldn't count that as a flaw since I get the feeling it was intentional. He is an imp after all. But I can't help but think that the game would have been a lot better looking if Scamp was cuter. Speaking of which, the voice acting in this game is also pretty good. Especially the voice actor behind the titular character himself.
You know, this game is pretty. Too pretty for these big hat clowns.
Yes, it's pretty. But it would be prettier if I wasn't trapped in here.
Yeah, I know. Scamp, come rescue me. Stop looking at the pretty crystals. Blah, blah, blah. Ugh, fun killer.
And the writing isn't bad. I wouldn't call it good, but some of the jokes did get a chuckle out of me, and for a kid's game, it's fine, I guess.
Scamp, I have a plan. Listen very carefully.
Shh. I'm focusing.
Scamp!
I have a plan too. I'm gonna kick this guy's ass.
At least there were no puns. God, I'm still not over this. How does this pun make any sense in the context of the conversation? And finally, the collectathon feel is there. I had many issues with the game, but for what it's worth, the collecting felt genuine. You only have 2 collectibles in the game, the 6 crystals needed to open the door to the final boss, and the coins. These coins can be used to unlock different skins for Scamp, which you can get by talking to this artist. You don't actually pay the artist for these skins though, they're just unlocked as soon as you have the amount of coins you need. But it was fun getting them nonetheless. It's even more fun because of the platforming in this game. You have so many ways to reach platforms, which include a jump, a double jump, hovering, jumping after a hover, and throwing a clone of yourself in order to teleport to it. It's a bit awkward at first, but after you get used to it, it's really fun to pull off. At least it would have been fun if the controls weren't so... more on that later. Now that we've talked about what the game did well, let's look at what could have been improved. We can start off with the game's polish. As I mentioned, the game is quite pretty, but it lacks polish. For example, take a look at the loading art. Look at how low res this image is. It looks like they just took a small image, then upscaled the heck out of it. This looks ugly and could have easily been fixed by creating a larger version of the same image. There is very little loading in the game and it only lasts for a second or two, so it's not a big deal. The big deal is that they thought this was okay for release. Next, we've got the exploration aspect. The level design is not bad. In fact, I quite enjoyed its vertical nature. You need to be aware of your surroundings, including what's below you and what's above you. The game has only 2 levels, 4 if you count the tutorial level and the final boss. There's a hub world-like level where you get 5 of the 6 crystals needed to beat the game. Then there's the mines, which you can enter via the hub world. The hub world is fine as far as layout goes, but it's a bit disorienting, especially since you get almost no direction as to where you're supposed to be going or what you're supposed to be doing. All you know is that you need to get 6 crystals to open up this door to get to the final boss. And here's where the problem lies. The game barely tells you anything. Take this guy for example. He tells you that you can't complete his challenge unless you have enough gems. What gems? And how many do I need? See, by gems he meant crystals. But the game doesn't tell you that. And it also doesn't tell you how many are needed to take on this challenge, which resulted in me going back to him after every crystal I got just to see what happens. Another example is these hat gravity portal things. I don't know, the game never gave them a name. I saw them and I had no idea what they're meant to be, and the game doesn't tell me anything about them. After a lot of fiddling around, I found out that throwing a clone at them takes it to a specific area which you can teleport to. To make matters worse, they then add these globes that can't be collected unless you pass through them while teleporting to your clone's position. Apparently, collecting them will create platforms for you to use. But again, the game doesn't tell you anything about that. Granted, the first time you experience these orbs is set in a way that you have no choice but to pass through them while teleporting. But how was I supposed to know what they did? For all I knew, they could have just been collectibles. While rewatching my footage, I noticed that this platform appeared after I collected the first 2 orbs. Fair enough, but it's so easy to miss that, and if you do, there's no way to do it again. Wouldn't it have been better if the master tells you what happened? I believe that would have been much more important than his constant nagging every now and again.
Why are you not moving? Scamp!
Roses are red, violets are blue.
Come on.
Everything sucks, especially you!
And finally, it's time to talk about the game's worst flaw that drastically hindered my enjoyment with it. The controls are abysmal. And although it's difficult to understand why without actually trying it yourself, I think I can pinpoint the biggest issues with it. First off, your character is extremely floaty. There is no weight to your movement at all, and the slightest jump moves you around like crazy. Remember how difficult it was to move Crash on ice? Well, imagine that, but airborne. And the button layout is all over the place. You use the X button to jump and double jump, but you use the L2 button to hover. In games like Spyro and Klonoa, you hover by holding down the jump button, so I don't see why it wasn't the case here as well. And why are there 2 different buttons for teleporting? To teleport to a clone that's in the air, you have to press the R1 button. But to teleport to a stationary clone, you press the circle button. Why? Wouldn't it have made more sense if you needed 1 button for both? And the game has no option to change the button layout, so you're stuck with these bizarre and unintuitive controls. Second, your hover move is very sluggish. You don't keep momentum when you hover, and your speed decreases to a point where you're barely moving forward. If you jump after hovering, you get back all your missing momentum, making you overshoot your destination. And third, your clone throwing move needs aiming, but you can't aim, since there's no first-person mode or a crosshair to help you aim accurately. Not that I know of anyway. I wouldn't put it past this game to have an aiming mechanic and not tell you about it. Not to mention, the way he throws the clone is randomized, hindering your accuracy even further. And if you miss, you can't throw another one till the first one either disappears or lands. The lack of a proper aiming mechanic also affects this move, where Scamp creates a magic shield that can reflect spells and fireballs. The shield appears based on the direction of Scamp's view, but without the ability to aim, puzzles like this become a chore. These are the issues I have with the game, and they're quite major ones. But this game had a lot of heart put into it, and it definitely feels like a true collectathon. I believe if the developers worked on these issues, they could definitely make a brilliant 3D platformer. This feels more like a proof of concept rather than an actual game, and I hope that's the case. I hope the developers made this game free because they wanted to gather as much feedback as possible before making a full version or a sequel. If that's the case, more power to them. And I truly believe they can do it. The foundation is there, it just needs tweaking. Major tweaking, sure, but I believe in their ability to handle it. Do I recommend this game? I can't really say for sure. I mean, it's free and it's only 1 hour long, so there's little reason not to give it a try if you love 3D platformers and collectathons. It's flawed, but there's a decent amount of fun to be had with it. Anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching.
If only I could control you directly. I'd sure be rescued faster.
So impatient.